Hello, this is Dr. Dave Maslak talking to you about reciprocity.com. The E is written with a 3. And in this particular video, I want to talk about why do you actually study organizations? And why would you actually get a PhD in business administration or a doctorate in business administration? So if you don't know, I'm actually a professor of innovation strategy and entrepreneurship. And I'm creating this whole reciprocity platform as my way to give back to as many people as I possibly can, because there were so many people that helped me along the way to get my own doctorate. So I created this sort of sharing economy proofreading platform, and then as my way to sort of market it to help out other people. So by the way, with that particular platform, my goal is to eventually do what are called A/B experiments, which are things that are done in Silicon Valley, and it's basically where you can compare sort of different use cases on the platform. But then as well as my goal is to hopefully, once I gotta recoup the cost, because my wife, it's all privately 100% owned by me. But my wife and I would probably like to get that money back at some point. So once we actually, because it costs a lot of money. So eventually, once we get this particular, we get that back, I would like to actually start giving some of the profits away to create sort of scholarships in this area, right? In terms of doing a PhD in business administration, there's lots of people that could use this. I knew that this was a particular area that I saw when I was going through to do my PhD, not only with me, but then there were so many people around the world that, here's these amazing people that are truly amazing. They're like the top skilled people, and yet we pay them really poorly, and it's no fault of the universities or anything like that, but that's just kind of the way it is. So I thought, wouldn't it be cool to create some sort of platform where I can, grow it and actually try to give back as much as I possibly can and create sort of scholarships and things that are really fun and interesting. And I couldn't possibly do that on like a salary of a professor. I can give back a little bit, but I would like to give back a lot and create something that is uniquely cool. So anyways, so enough about that. So why do you actually study organizations? So there's lots of different reasons. So first of all, you might be thinking, like, it seems strange to study organizations, right? There are so many other better ways or things to study, like cancer, the political process, right? Or just generally how the physical world works, right? So why does the sun stay over there and it doesn't float away, or all these kind of things like this, right? Compared to the Earth. By the way, I'm an engineer in my training, and that's what I did in my undergrad, and I decided to go into business. And I think there's lots of different reasons now that I understand a little bit more, but at the time, I'll get into it in a minute, but there's many reasons to study organizations I think are really cool. So first of all, it's one of the most important forms of getting work done, right? If you just look around us, that's how we get most of our work done. And if we did things independently, we probably wouldn't get a lot done. There's a great video, a TED Talk, if you want to see this, where somebody actually created his own toaster and did it all from scratch, and it's a complete disaster. Maybe one day that eventually I'll put up a link, but right now, just, you can look up, just search for the TED Talk about the toaster, and you'll think it's hilarious because this person actually tried to do everything himself and realized it was thousands of dollars to make this silly old toaster, and it just doesn't work very well. So as organizations do this very well, we can do things that we couldn't possibly do. The second thing is that we live and are part of organizations all around us, right? Like the family unit is an organization of some sort, right? Anytime that you do anything in life, you're going to be part of organizations. I went to a party last night for our suburb, and that was done by an organization. It had to be done by an organization for this sort of pool party that we had. There's all sorts of different things that are done by organizations, not just the things that you think about. Our entire country or countries around the world are run by organizations. So it's really important sort of concept to get our head around. And a third reason is probably organizations are one of the major reasons why we actually have succeeded and progressed as a society. I know that sometimes it seems not so much, but the the reason why we actually make progress is because of organizations, and we're sort of moving forward as a species, that we are actually doing things that we possibly couldn't do before independently. And working together is one way, and that's largely how I view organizations, is reasons to work together, and markets as well. They're sort of social constructs. And it's the reason why we actually accomplish the things that we do, and we have massive cities, and we actually are getting a lot more people are out of poverty than they used to be in terms of a proportion of the population. Lots less people are getting sick now than they used to be. We generally have a longer lifespan than what we used to have across most countries. Some countries not so much, but the reason why that those ones are not doing so well is because the organizations are not really doing as an effective job as they should be within those particular countries, right? And we know this kind of stuff. It's really interesting to understand it. So the fourth thing, if you actually want to help people discover the cure for cancer or the political process or understand the world around us, right? A laboratory or chemistry lab, for example, is an organization, and we have to study, and there's people that study them at different universities, how these things actually work, right? So how does a lab actually work? What's the political process that happens in a lab? How does a university work? How do people sort of navigate these issues? How do we generate knowledge, right? There's all these kind of ideas that come out and that we are interested in, and we have to understand how this stuff actually works. And if we understand that, then we can maybe, inform people that are managing it a little bit more eventually, and we can operate these particular things a little bit better, right? And there's all sorts of rationale, right? We understand that. So, for example, the M form, the multidivisional form, is a really effective way of managing larger corporations. And so once we understood this, then we were able to sort of tell more people about it, that this is actually a really effective way to manage. And we have larger organizations now than we used to do that are doing things for us that we couldn't possibly do before. And, we think that the natural environment is quite complex, but organizations are really complex. Markets are really, really complex in a lot of different ways. We can't necessarily understand what's going on there, and we can understand only a small part in sort of the physical world, but we can only understand a small part within the sort of social world as well. So there's always so much to study, right? That's the cool thing that's here. And that's, for me personally, this is what I want to talk about. For me personally, it's really just studying. I'm just curious that it is a remarkable thing that we have these organizations and we don't just go around and things just don't collapse. Why is it that I actually want to work with somebody, right? Like, I'm scared of most people, and you should be, right? Because most people are stranger danger, right? So why is it that allows us to work together that we wouldn't normally work together, right? That's kind of a curious thing. And understanding how, if we understand organizations, we kind of understand human nature a little bit. So how psychology works, for example, or how I would work. And so what's really neat is that by doing something like this, putting up videos, for example, I'm understanding more about myself than I am about you. And, this is kind of a remarkable thing. So as I'm studying this and trying to understand this particular thing, I'm actually understanding how I work. And I do understand a little bit more how I work, and which is really neat, right? And we can understand, like, for example, why do we trust the banking system? It seems a really strange thing to trust, right? Like, there's no inherent value in a dollar. Why do we actually trust this kind of stuff? What is going on there? How do, and if we understand that, we can maybe understand a little bit how organizations might get worse or better. Sometimes we like to, and personally I study learning from failure. Why is it that a lot of organizations fail to get better, or how do they actually learn from their own particular failures, right? There's so many things that you could study around the world that is just truly remarkable. So, for me, to getting a doctorate in business administration or a PhD in business administration, whatever you want to call it, is really to be a scientist. Right, so you get to work as if you are a scientist, and you get to go back to your second grade, and you get to do the thing that you always wanted to do and study this particular thing as a scientist. So you get to understand how organizations work and markets work, and how the components of the organization sort of function together. That's really what the different sort of subfields in this domain look at, is, how these different things kind of work together. And you kind of just get to play around and be a scientist as much as you possibly can. And so some of you might think, well, you're just kind of greedy and you're kind of studying this particular thing because you want to make a lot of money. That's not the case, right? So only a very small fraction of all professors in a business school, or all people that get a PhD, study what makes organizations more efficient or help them make more money. That's a really, really tiny proportion of the people that are doing that. And most of the time, most people are just interested and they're just curious at the end of the day why people do things, right? So you just want to understand why things work, and why do social beings work, right? And that's really, at the end of the day, that's what you're doing. So that's the key thing. And so just to demonstrate this, I often have conversations with people that are not in academia that end up being really awkward because, naturally conversations will sort of navigate towards what is happening in the world and stuff like that. And, I'm more curious about why some crazy thing is happening, social thing that's happening. Why is there large amounts of crime that are in some, particular parts, particular cities around the world? Or why are we going to this particular area for war or something like that? And I'm just curious about understanding why that is the case. And it ends up being an awkward conversation because I think people are thinking in a different way, right? That is sort of this sort of political agenda. But I'm just more curious about why that is happening, and how can we sort of solve that particular thing, or how can it be studied going forward? So that's it. That's what I wanted to talk about. So why do you study organizations, and why do you get a PhD in business administration? It's because you're curious and you just are thoughtful and you want to think about things much more deeply. And as a scientist, right, you get to go back to second grade and get to be that second grade person that you've always wanted to be. So that's it. Take care and have a wonderful day. Oh, by the way, give me a thumbs up if you like this video, and do subscribe to the YouTube channel. Bye.